What's up, guys? Welcome back to Legacy Landcraft. My name is Dylan, and today we're going to talk about the things that we're doing in preparation to go off-grid. So one of the things that we're doing is, while we're still working full-time jobs, is buying the things that we think are going to be useful and or necessary for what we're trying to do. So the entire plan kind of looks like this. We save up the money that we need for the property that we want to buy. We accumulate the equipment and the gear and the stuff that we want now, and then we don't have to buy it again. So a couple of things are really important with that. The first thing that's really important is making sure that what you're purchasing is a quality item. Now, we did a lot of research into minimalism in preparation to begin this, and part of minimalism is buying less, but buying things that are made of quality, things that are going to last years as opposed to months or, for example, one season. So we might spend a little bit more on, let's say, a quality fishing rod or reel, but we're doing that to save money down the line. What we want is to accumulate gear that is serviceable for long periods of time, something sturdy, something that's not just going to break or stop working. So we do this by doing firstly a ton of research before we decide to purchase a specific item. So if there's something we want or feel like we'll need, we'll go on, we'll read all kinds of reviews, we'll read about the construction and the company, all in an effort to make sure that the item that we're buying is something that's going to last us many years to come. So the other part, at least as far as the financial aspect is concerned, is obviously we're saving money towards buying property. We also made sure we paid off all of our consumer debt. That means credit cards, any loans besides vehicle loans. It's important not to have money going out because we're going to end up with a very constricted budget at some point. So we wanted to make sure we had as much money in our pockets every paycheck as possible. We don't want all of the money that we earn right now to just get spent on consumer debt. So we paid it all off when we got our tax return and I got my severance from my last job. So now we're operating from a place of very little debt, which means we get to keep more of the money that we're earning, and in turn we get to save more and spend more on things that we think are really valuable. So another thing that we're doing to prepare for this kind of life is practicing the skills that are going to be necessary to live like this. So I have experience hunting, I have some experience fishing, but Morgan doesn't have quite as much. I don't have any experience when it comes to things like sewing, very little in the realm of construction, and these are all skills that are going to be so incredibly valuable in this style of life. So it's important that we practice them now. So we've started doing things like starting our own seedlings in the house, getting ready to plant, practicing fishing, making sure we can consistently get fish. As we hike, we do a lot of scouting. For hunting, we do have this upcoming season, and we want to make sure that we're prepared to not waste a tag and to bring home food for our families. So practicing these skills, getting outside and spending some time doing them before it's necessary for your survival is super, super important. We learn what kind of lures certain fish like, what, certain bodies of water, what does better at certain bodies of water, what time of day, what temperature, what water levels. These are all kind of aspects of fishing that maybe you don't consider. It's like, okay, well, what lure and what time of day and what lake? There's a lot that goes into it. So it's really important to build up your repertoire of skills and understanding of what you're doing in order to be able to execute it more often than not. In terms of going off grid, if we're relying on fishing as a source of food, we want to make sure we can catch as many fish as we're legally allowed and able to store and build up our stock of fish. You don't want the first time you're trying to grow a garden to be when you absolutely need the food. So it's important to practice skills like this, and it's important to practice them routinely to the point where they just become muscle memory. You just know it. You don't have to think too hard. You don't have to reference literature every single time you want to plant something or go out and do something. So build these skills up beforehand. Work on them. Perfect them. Get good at the things you're gonna need to be good at in order to survive off-grid. One of the other incredibly vital aspects of this has been researching land. So before you buy land, you want to make sure that the land you're buying is what you need and has everything that, an off-grid homestead might require. So we do a ton of research online. We look at land as we're passing by and seeing signs, for sale signs. We want to see if the land is appropriate, and if it is, how much does it cost? Where is it? What are the taxes? What are the zoning regulations, right? These are all aspects of purchasing land that are incredibly important. Do the mineral rights convey? Do the water rights convey? In some states, that's a big issue. I'm thinking out west mostly, but water rights is super, super important, because if you don't have water rights, even if you have a source of water, then you're still gonna have to truck it in, and that's an additional cost. So one of the biggest things that you can do in preparation to go off-grid is start to study land, understand what it needs to have, the size that it needs to be, and the cost of the associated land in the area that you want to be. You can go places like West Virginia, you can go to the deserts of Colorado, and you can get very huge swaths of land for very little money. But that comes at other types of cost. West Virginia, for example, it's mostly mountain. There's not a lot of civilization. You're probably going to be, in a community of other mountain people. Out west, there might not be somebody for 10 miles. You might not have access to water. You might not even have a road. The property might be landlocked. So access to the property, access to water, cost, size, buildable property is super important, because you might have 40 acres, but if you can't build on it, it's a useless 40 acres. So researching land is probably one of the most important things we can do in preparation to go off-grid. So another thing that's super important is getting used to not only gathering food and foraging, right? So we talked about the skills, but getting used to a different diet. There's not going to be fast food in our futures, hopefully. There's not going to be frozen pizzas or pizza shops. It's all going to be home-cooked stuff. We'll likely end up having to go to the grocery store for some things, but it's very important that we adjust our diets ahead of time. Historically, I'm not a big fish person. I do like sushi. So like rainbow trout, for example, is something that I'm not used to eating. But we expect to rely on fish as one of our sources of food. So I need to get used to eating fish, but I also need to learn how to prepare it in a way that is palatable and that we enjoy. And my body has to get used to it. Our bodies are used to mostly processed garbage, and we want to transition our body solely for our health to cleaner, healthier, non-processed food as much as possible. So in order to do that, we've had to change our diets. We've had to change the kind of food we're eating, the way we're preparing it, and some of the things that we're putting in it. So another important thing to set up for yourself if you intend to go off-grid is get used to the diet first. You do not want to try to go off-grid and then find out you cannot stand venison. So make sure you're trying these foods, make sure you're learning how to prepare them, in ways that are palatable, in ways that you enjoy. It'll make it that much easier when you switch over from on-grid to off-grid living. And I think for today's video, the final thing I'd like to touch on, as far as what we're doing to prepare to go off-grid, is working on our physical fitness. Now, I was a high school wrestler, I was a boxer, I was in the Marine Corps, but that was over 10 years ago at this point. So I've gotten a fair bit out of shape, and that makes very physical things challenging after a little while. Off-grid living is hard. It requires so much work and effort. I mean, you have animals, gardens, the homestead itself, any construction projects, the food gathering portion, the storing, the processing, it's a lot. So in order to be able to accomplish these things, one of the things we've been really focusing on is our physical health. We've been doing a ton of hiking. We've been making sure that we're eating clean. We've been making sure that we're drinking as much water as we're supposed to, while also cutting out things that we're not supposed to be drinking, things like alcohol, things like soda, things like energy drinks. So we've switched to coffee, and we get up and we have a pour over machine that we use. So we're trying to, adjust our physical health to ensure that while we're trying to build this style of life, that we're able to do it, and we're able to do it in the way that we want and not be relegated to, oh, I can only, work on the chicken coop for 3.5, 4 hours because my back starts to hurt. I don't want my back to hurt. I want to be able to do it and get it done in a reasonable amount of time for the project. So I think it's really important to consider your physical health before you consider this kind of lifestyle. And if you're not happy with where it's at, or if you don't think it's sufficient for what you're going to need, work on it. It's probably one of the easier things to work on. So get out there, get active, build your body up to where it can withstand this kind of lifestyle. And I think these are the things that'll help set us apart when it comes time to transition. All right, guys, so we talked about a bunch of stuff today. These are all things that we found to be incredibly important in preparation for our journey to go off-grid. Share down below what you think is really important. If you have gone off-grid, tell me what your biggest challenges were. Maybe it was some things that I didn't expect. I am somebody that loves to do research. I love to know everything about everything that I'm interested in. And this is another one of those things. So if you have any tips below, if you've gone off-grid, tell me what your biggest challenges were. Tell me what your biggest unexpected challenge was. As always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and we will see you next time.